I can't tell you how many times I go into an organization and the person that is been moved up is moved up because there's a void above them. Not that they're prepared for it. And I can understand even if they're moved up and not prepared for it, but there's no plan in order to upskill them to meet the requirements of their new role. And worse, they almost never prepare the person that's going to fill their shoes. So now you have this stretching of inability across the stratification of the organization, and eventually the rubber band breaks. I agree.
Yep.
I would not argue with those numbers at all. I see it time and again that people are just promoted and not prepared, and there's no plan to prepare them.
So you think, at that level, you think that how does that affect that person? But more importantly, as you get closer to the front line, they're in charge of more people. How does it affect the people? And, when you have a frontline leader that's in charge of, 40 people, find another manager somewhere within your organization that has 40 direct reports. You're probably going to have a hard time finding that.
Right.
And so that's right there where that weakest link could be. And that's where I think that, we certainly need to do this at the management level. When we, like you said, stretch this rubber band, eventually something breaks. But we've got to be able to do better at getting our leaders what they need, because almost all of them are what they call accidental managers. They were just filling a void. Now go figure it out.
Right.
One other interesting statistic, so the 89% of employees say a good manager is more important than pay.
Welcome to A State of Readiness, a podcast set as a fireside chat with business leaders to discuss what it takes for a company to be in a state of readiness and become a high-performance organization, with your host, Joseph Paris.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of State of Readiness. I'm your host, Joseph Paris. Today, my guest is Scott Lushin, Senior Manager of Global Operational Excellence at Donaldson Company Incorporated. Donaldson helps solve some of the world's most complex filtration and contamination control challenges and is headquartered in Bloomington, Minnesota. Scott's career began in the automobile service industry and then the restaurant business, where he inadvertently and informally began experimenting with improvement concepts and leadership principles. Wanting to get into manufacturing, he was hired by Donaldson through a temp agency, and now, 32 years later, and still with a passion for honing his CI and leadership skills, he is one of the leaders of Donaldson's efforts in operational excellence. Hey, welcome, Scott. Welcome to my podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good today.
All right. So it's getting to be the tail end of 23. How are your goals coming for this year?
Well, our goals for the year are actually looking pretty good. We've made a lot of progress with our objectives, so doing pretty good.
Yeah, how about you personally?
Personally, I am just swamped. I am busy. A lot of people know how to get a hold of me, and they kind of take advantage of that.
Yeah, but I'm sure that you have goals, personal goals, wife, family, et cetera, et cetera. Did you get enough time this year to mend those fences if they needed mending?
Oh yeah. So got a couple kids, but they're grown. They're doing their own thing, and my wife is very supportive of the work that I do. She gets me on the weekends, and between projects, I'm at home, so I get to work from home most of the time when I'm not traveling. So and she's working from home, so we get to spend some time together. So everything there is pretty good.
Well, I really appreciate your joining me today. I've enjoyed our previous conversations. We got hooked up, as many people do, on LinkedIn, and you had a pretty interesting story that came out in our subsequent conversation. So I just wanted to invite you to my podcast and have you share some of your wisdom that you've gained over the years.
Yeah, certainly. So if I could recite a little bit of that story to kind of refresh that conversation for your audience. But yeah, so early on, I kind of had the bug for continuous improvement. I don't know where it came from. I was always a creative person. And right out of high school, I actually became a manager of a automotive service chain. and ended up becoming like a training manager for them before I eventually moved on to work in the food industry, actually restaurant. And I worked, it was actually for a close friend of mine. His family had a restaurant chain that they were trying to grow. And I ended up becoming like a training manager, district manager actually for this restaurant chain. And things didn't go well, right? They had a good product, but it's hard to compete sometimes. And they ended up filing bankruptcy, which put me in a pretty bad position.
How many stores did they have?
At their peak, they had 6. So at their peak, they had 6, mostly in and around the Indianapolis area. They had one in Marion, Indiana. Actually, that's where they started. And they ended up moving to Indianapolis, wanting to capitalize on growth there. And they just got swallowed up. And at that time, I'm growing my family. I've got a new child. And then now I'm working for a company. Well, not working for a company that went bankrupt. And so I went against my mom's advice. My mom said, stay away from manufacturing. All her life, she was in manufacturing. She said, do something better, stay away from manufacturing. But yeah, someone told me, they said, hey, I know this along this industrial strip, they're doing some hiring. So I went knocking on the doors, and Donaldson let me in. And at the time I was making minimum wage. Actually, I was just a temp. They hired through a temp agency. So I had to do something, right? So at that time, actually, I was working 2 jobs to try to keep my family afloat. And Donaldson let me in. And from there, my career trajectory has been kind of a wild one throughout the years. I've been with them now for 32 years. And started off, folding boxes in the packaging area where they needed help. And I advanced through the ranks, became a frontline leader. I was a frontline leader for several years. I was a machine operator with a crew, had a crew of like about 15 people with a piece of equipment that fed the 15 people. Became a frontline leader, supervisor, engineer. I was they moved me into engineering. Now that's kind of interesting because I had some lean concepts as a frontline leader, and the guy at the time, he's now the president of the company. He was my ops manager, and he noticed that I was doing things, and to get better. I was on 3rd shift, and that's where you don't get a lot of support. And go ahead. Did you have a question?
You had a couple of questions there. Somehow they couldn't figure out a way to get rid of you. All right. They just kept on moving on up. But you said that you got some ideas about lean. Where did you get those ideas?
I don't know. So, my mom had said, fair. So my mom, she would talk to me, talk to us about what they were doing at work, and through absorption, I must have picked up something because I think they were doing some lean manufacturing, but it was always of interest to me, always trying to figure out how to improve things, how to make things better. And then also took to leadership, what's it take to become a good leader. I was really trying to develop myself as a leader and develop those around me. But as my career within Donaldson, what happened was with the continuous improvement, this Rich Lewis, he pulled me aside and said, hey, I want to start lean manufacturing for our organization. And so he had already started to make improvements out on the shop floor with his team. But then he pulled me in, and I became the first full-time lean person for Donaldson. And that's really what started my career in continuous improvement, officially starting it. And then I took those talents into engineering, into supervision, operations management, and now globally for the operational excellence team.
So has all of your lean experience been self-taught? Did you go to a class, a school, LinkedIn learning, anything? Where did you get your LinkedIn or your continuous improvement background?
Yeah, good question. It's a mix. really. So I had a good mentor, right? He was still dabbling, trying to figure it out, reading books, and he would give me a book and I would read. I'm an avid learner. I'm always listening to audiobooks, to podcasts, reading and connecting with people and trying to find out, how to do something or get advice. So a lot of it was certainly trial and error. And along the way, I've actually learned some things that are not often touched on when it comes to making a successful continuous improvement or lean program. So some of those things are certainly self-taught.
Right. To me, lean has always been common sense. I don't know what it is, but if you're just trying to do things easier, I mean, it's self-serving. I mean, I think it was Henry Ford that says, give me a lazy person because he'll figure out how to do it easier. It's a lot of it's common sense. And when I got into it myself, back in the early 2000s, when I was on my own dream walk trying to figure out what my company was going to do next, I gravitated towards industrial and systems engineering. And, all of the teachings, other than the math, the math was always like, I got to tell you, I'm a systems guy. I'm a thinker, like big picture. You won't catch me on the floor with the stopwatch and doing math. I mean, I could do it. I just don't like to do it. You know what I mean? It's just it's just not my bag. But I think I followed the same path as you. I just was fortunate to gravitate towards my old university, and they had a system science and industrial engineering department, and I've been on the board of that now for like 25 years, for like forever almost. But your leadership skills, how did you hone your leadership skills?
So that would be Zig Ziglar and John Maxwell.
Okay.
I went to the local library. I started grabbing books and listening to audiobooks. And I did that very early on as a frontline leader. They used to joke that I had a different title every 18 months within Donaldson. And it wasn't that they didn't have a hard time fitting me in. It was that I had a skill which would work, as an engineer or in lean or in leadership or in operations. That skill that I have was learned oftentimes through finding someone that I connect with. And sometimes it was through an audiobook. But I used to say that I tell my leaders this, the leaders that I'm in contact with, is that everybody can be a mentor. They just don't know it. I've had so many mentors in my life. They just didn't realize they were my mentor. There's always something to learn from somebody, everybody. There's always something to learn. And it could be that I want to learn to be like that. It could also be to learn, I don't want to be like that. And you have to make a conscious effort to learn those things from the people around you. You pick up you have these people that are really good at wordsmithing, and I'm like, I want to be better at that. Or they're really good at connecting with people. Like, how do you do that? I'm inherently an introvert, but when you see me on the shop floor, you would never know it. And I learned those from watching other people and observing. And like I said, I'm always learning.
I have this theory or phrase that I use called stealth mentorship. I believe, and if I reflect back on my journey, the best mentors I've ever had didn't know they were mentors. You know what I mean? As you said, you observed them, you'd ask them questions, you'd share a story or an anecdote or a situation, and they would just give you their, from the gut reaction, not quite telling you what to do, but just, as a reasonable sounding board. And it's really remarkable, because I've actually had some people that I didn't know I was a mentor to reach out over the last decade or so with some real seriously heartfelt messages to me. And I was like, holy shit, I didn't even know. So I think that when there's an actual mentorship relationship formalized, like declared, I think it loses a little bit of its rawness. And I think that might be necessary to be an excellent mentor. What are your thoughts or experiences on that?
Well, I don't know if I would fully agree that you lose some of that rawness. The one thing that I've really expanded in the last, let's say 3 or 4 years is mentorship. I'm mentoring several people with, I have people that I mentor that's not even part of our, part of our company, part of our organization. And those mentorships, they're based on honesty. They're also based on tough conversations if need be, right? And that should be the expectation going in, is that what are your objectives?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you want a mentor? And getting that out open in the beginning is that, okay, I'll help you. I'll guide you. I can show you a path, but you have to work it. And if you're not working it, then I'm going to tell you, I don't feel like you're really working it. And that I think is really important. I also have a belief that that good mentors are not part of your organization or part of your structure. And I think that's really important because you get that more, you can be more raw, you can be more honest and open. You're going to get more from the mentee. You're going to get them expressing their feelings that they wouldn't feel comfortable doing if it was some sort of within their report structure. And I think that's extremely important. And I've had really good luck with, getting to how people feel about something and telling them, hey, suggesting to them ways of going about or thinking, and extremely good luck with it.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about outside of your structure. I think that's important because, these conversations, nobody wants to end up having an interview with HR, right? And sometimes those conversations can get quite raw, but I'm not sure if it's a mentor's job to guide a person on a path rather than to be the Sherpa for that person on their path. Like, unless it was going like that person was going seriously sideways, if they come to, as Yogi Berra said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it, right? But should we guide them to go to the left or go to the right? Or should we just be the sounding board to help them decide for themselves which way they should go?
Well, I think we could do both, actually. So if we really get into the mind of this development, the person that we're developing, is that what do you aspire to be? Why are we doing this? Why am I spending time with you? Why are you spending time with me? And as we get into some of those conversations, we can throw out suggestions. Like, I suggested a book, and this book was based on the beliefs of this person I'm thinking of. I'm like, hey, I have this book that I read a couple of years ago, and I'm just going to suggest it and tell me what you think about it. And that's the type of guidance that I'm talking about. And he didn't know it existed. He didn't know that it would be helpful to him. And this last conversation I had with him last week, he goes, I'm halfway through this book. And he goes, I've already started implementing some of the things that's suggested in this book. And he goes, my interaction with the people out on the shop floor is so much better. Thank you. So showing this person that there is a resource other than me. I can be a resource that guides you to another resource.
Right.
This person wants to be in management. And I ask him to look into those things, like what's important to management, what's important, what are the things that are important that you have to accomplish to get to that goal. And that's the type of guidance that I'm talking about.
It's funny, right? I give an introductory talk, or usually the semester is already underway back at my university, to the industrial engineering and system science students, and I tell them that they have probably picked the worst possible discipline to study and base their career on out of all the ones that are available. And of course, everybody's like a little bit shocked that I said that, but you think about this as CI people. When a carpenter's done with his job, he puts his tools down, he goes home, and that's it for the day, right? If you are working as a programmer at some tech company. You go home at the end of the day and you're done. There's always an end of the day for every profession that I could think of, except for continuous improvement people. Because we will go to the grocery store and we'll wonder, why are those cans stacked that way? Wouldn't it be better if they stacked them this way? And, God forbid we go to the airport and there's 1,000 different ways we could improve. A friend of mine retired from as director of OpEx, and he shared on LinkedIn that he got in trouble with his wife because he started rearranging the kitchen. It's like, what a rookie mistake. He's out for 3 weeks and he's rearranging the kitchen to make it more efficient. So, I mean, this is a lot of the continuous improvement person in my mind, is that, we're always trying to figure out why things are the way they are and how to make them better. And that's not just, the business end where we're pushing buttons and boxes down conveyor belts, but we're also thinking about the people side. How can we get the individuals to perform at a higher level of performance? Do they need training? Do they need education? Do they need experience? Do they need a different role? I mean, not every position is a fit for every person at an organization. So you've been at Donaldson for 30 some years. And you started off as a temp, and like I said, they couldn't figure out a way to get rid of you. And here you are, 30 some years later, and you're doing what?
So now it's global operational excellence. So I have the pleasure of doing a lot of traveling, connecting with a lot of people. But in 2019, our objective was a little different. When I entered operational excellence, we had an objective of moving the needle on certain targets, certain key performance indicators. And now we're getting back to some of the basics. So in the last 6 months, we've been focusing more on some of those foundational things that we need to build upon. And one of the cornerstones that, so I'll go back to 2019. I ruffled some feathers with a large lean group that's local here. It's called Wabash Valley Lean Network, and put together our plan.
Is that like an MEP or something like that associated with?
Yeah,
leans?
I don't know. I think they're their own entity, but it is hundreds of within a region businesses that can participate, go to their workshops.
Okay.
I've been a speaker there before. So it's, but anyway, so in 2019, I'll tell you the transition that we kind of went through. In 2019, we had an objective of moving the needle for margins, right? We wanted to straighten that out. I won't get into the details of it, but it was, what can we do to move the needle? And so that's why I joined. My expertise was going to be leadership and productivity. And I had this process. I didn't know it was a process. It was a process for finding opportunities that move the needle that we wanted. How do we find those opportunities, and what process do we use to move the needle, specifically with productivity? And so that was what I did for about 3 years. There were other things that I worked on, but my objective was to go in and help the leadership and the teams, show them how to identify where those opportunities were at,
right, and
consistently moving the needle 10 to 30% in a line within 2 weeks is pretty exhilarating. And that happened time and time again for about 3 years. And then the assessment was showing that just the foundation fundamentals, we need to go back to those throughout our global organization and build that up. And so we're pivoting a little bit. We'll get back to the productivity stuff, but we're pivoting now to get to the foundation. And again, to ruffle feathers, I've stated before that I don't believe that 5S is where you start. That I believe where you start is with frontline leadership. That's actually just leadership in general. And that tool you can use is leader standard work. A lot of people use leader standard work incorrectly, in my opinion, and we're trying to straighten that out. And how people use it is a checklist. It's not a checklist. It's a developmental tool. Mm-hmm. And if done correctly, you can use your leader standard work as an ongoing development tool to ensure that whatever foundational item you institute, it will stick. So most of these facilities we've gone into have already done the 5S years ago, and then it dropped off. You lose the momentum, you lose the energy. And there's a number of reasons why. But how can we stabilize that? And I believe that it has to be controlled at that leader standard work level before it can be sustained.
So a couple of things. First off, how did you ruffle the feathers? Because I didn't hear anything there that would have ruffled feathers. But
so it is the belief that leader standard work is a checklist. That it is a checklist of these are the things that I have to accomplish throughout the day. And the part that was a little that I ruffled the feathers with is that a lot of our facilities or in organizations, they have leader standard work, and that's exactly what it is. It's a checklist. And saying that, hey, we're going to, I appreciate the fact that you have leader standard work, but we need to add a couple of things to it to really make it work. And having people switch that vision has been a little bit challenging.
So with leader standard work, I mean, to me, you have to be genuine to yourself, and it's as soon as you start thinking about checklists, it means that you're not being genuine, right? I mean, it just means that you're going down a routine, not that your heart is in it, not even that you believe it. You're just doing it because it's on the checklist. So, where do you differ from the checklist to the not checklist?
Well, it's still a checklist, right?
Right.
There's really no way around it. The way that it works is that these are the things that are expected of me, and I need to be held accountable to them. And it's hard to get away from the word checklist. Like, it's like we talk about, checklist for Gemba audits. I don't like the word audit. So we call them Gemba walks, but at its foundation, it's still an audit. It has a negative connotation when you say audit. Checklist, to me and you, it sounds like it's kind of a negative connotation. But the way it works is that it has to work at all levels of our organization, that we have standard work that within that leader standard work, we are accountable for having conversations with our reports or our managers. We are going to be held accountable to what needs to be done now in today, in this next quarter. And so a leader standard work should have things on it like, I'll give you an example. We just finished up a project this week, actually. And on their leader standard work, they're re-rolling out the 5S. And so the frontline leaders have been trained, and on that leader standard work is that they're going to have what's called a daily action sheet, which is the operator's tasks for that day. Have one rolled out by each supervisor or team leader, one a week. So it's going to be a slow rollout. But then there's a supervisor check on that, helping identify the strategy. That's on their leader standard work. And then the management, they have their responsibilities of auditing that process as well. So it just can't be that we throw it out there and expect it to get done. It's actually, there's a whole feedback loop that goes with it. So yeah, we can treat it as a checklist, but we also know that someone's going to come along and see how it's going, and to know whether or not we're pencil whipping it, or do we not believe in it, or anything like that. And so it has to be a whole loop of throughout the entire leadership and the shop floor. Right.
That's interesting, because I would be concerned that it would become something that is more animated and disingenuine than something that is actually creating a culture of leadership, for lack of a better term. Is that just the way it's implemented and viewed, or what are the pitfalls here?
So the pitfalls, certainly I've given that a lot of thought, because I've seen a lot of things fall apart after you walk away. And so one of the most, so this happened a few years ago. We were rolling out some continuous improvement work, and I had the gentleman there. he said, "Hey, can we stay connected as I go through this process? Because, you're kind of far away, and it was through a joint venture. And so I still meet with the guy, 4 years later, I'm meeting with this guy every week. And what I learned from that is that he's always moving the needle. I had someone say, as long as you're moving the ball, eventually you'll get a touchdown. And that's what he's doing. And every week he now holds himself accountable because he has to present to me. It's one of the meetings I look forward to the most. And he said he looks forward to it the most as well. He gets to show his work.
Meeting? How long is the meeting? Okay.
It's just a half hour.
Yeah. So he gets to show his work.
He gets to show his work, and I get to ask the question: show me why what you're working on is the right thing to go after. And so that's always that compass that you have to bring when you have those meetings. Is I tell people, look, you can find a problem and go work on a problem. We can be great problem solvers, but are we solving the right problems? What needle are we trying to move? Let's ask that question first.
Right.
Is it safety? Is it quality? Is it delivery? Is it cost? Is it what? Right. And so once we know what needle we need to move, then we can start asking the question of, what you found, is it going to move that needle? Prove to me, show me why and how it's going to move that needle. And phenomenal success with this weekly accountability. And so as we start rolling out rolling out and putting energy back into our lean program, there's a follow-up. There is an accountability meeting as well. I mean, I'm not calling it an accountability meeting, but that's really what it is that you select these people from last week. Next week, we're going to have a half-hour meeting. Show me what you've learned and what needles you moved with the 5S, for example. And so we're going to continue those things. And it's not just with me. It doesn't have to be a meeting with me. It could be with some other guy off our team or whatever. But that's how if you show the work, you're going to continue that work. If you know that you're on the hook for showing your work, eventually it becomes ingrained. I know this other guy that I've been talking with for 4 years. I could walk away now and he would never stop. He sees it, he feels it, it's in his blood. He's going to keep doing it. And it takes a long time sometimes to get people to that level.
So I'm going to guess that during a 34-year career, it's 34 years, 30-something years?
32, yeah.
32, that you've seen some downturns in the business. And of course, when downturns happen, usually the body count shrinks. How had you? I'm sure Donaldson had to go through at least one of them in 32 years' time. How did you navigate through headcount reduction and still try to maintain we'll call it, for lack of a better term, a trueness to lean and continuous improvement?
So the downturns that I've felt are when I was in the plant, actually, some function within the plant, and building the continuous improvement and lean programs from the ground up to transform this facility that I was assigned to in Frankfort, Indiana. We roll out a program, 5S, we roll out TPMs, standard work, and we have never given up. I think that's the thing, is that even though we may have lost headcount, we always held it accountable, that we held the people accountable for doing their work, because it was defined. If things were not defined, then you get chaos, right? I always say that we don't succeed on a project until we've developed the standards. And we spent a lot of time and a lot of energy developing the standards for everything within that facility. And so it's kind of like when you don't do something for a long time, it's hard to recover. You've got a big mess to clean up. When people don't do 6S or 5S, you come back in 5 years later and, oh my gosh, it's going to take you months to get it back. But once you get it, maintaining it and sustaining it is not that hard. And so when you have the energy that you can put into it, you have to build it with the energy, knowing that you're going to sustain it. So when we hit the downturns, All we have to do is maintain it, because we may not have the energy to expand it, but we can have the energy to sustain it, because sustaining is actually fairly easy once you get everything established.
Right. That's good. So, so what's next for your program and yourself, your personal development?
Oh gosh, yeah, I don't know. So this, we've gone through, like I said, we've gone through kind of a change within our structure, and I think what's coming next is that it's going to stay global, but it's foundational. So next development for me is, I'm always picking up the latest piece, understanding what's working and all of that, and trying to employ it. But for me right now, my biggest challenge is the leader standard work, getting everybody to understand how all of those links happen, how we can develop leaders through that process. I'm taking notes. I've got about 2 or 3 books that I want to write. So I think personally, I've got to get these books out of my head. I know that, you do a lot of writing. Writing doesn't come easy for me, but I'm not going to say it's frustrating, but it's, through my experience, I'm seeing where we could do better, not just Donaldson, right? This is just in the wild. I see the way, frontline leaders lead their people. And I think that we could do better at developing our leaders, because once they're developed, continuous improvement becomes so much easier. So I would like to either write articles or a book. Like I said, I have a ton of notes on that. So I don't know, maybe that's it for me.
Well, I could be a coach on you on that, having been there. So feel free to reach out any old time on that subject. I will say that don't look for perfection, because you'll never find it. And you could argue over the sentence structure forever, and the wording of it, and you'll never be satisfied. And you come back the next day and you even fixed it even more. So sometimes you got to just understand that close enough is good enough. That would be my snippet for that on this podcast. But the fact that you're always looking for that next thing, you know what I mean, and the wealth of experience that you've had. The question I would have is about the leader standard work. You used the word a couple of times, global. How do you scale being able to touch everybody that needs to be touched, to learn leader standard work, and then understand it? I mean, there's 2 different things there. One is to learn, and one is to actually be able to use it. So what's your game plan for trying to get that level of awareness across your various facilities?
So I learned a lot. I think we all learned a lot when COVID locked us all down. How do you get the message out? And so when we formed the team originally, we thought, we're going to hoof it. We're going to go into the trenches, and we're going to work the work and work the processes, and we're going to make a difference. But then when COVID hit, it's like you have to rethink it. I know you can't see it, but off screen here, I have a green screen. You can see the backside of it a little bit. It's blue. But I do a lot of training and development content. So I develop my own content. I have training and development videos that I've created to show how to do the work, that how to find opportunities. And then the same thing kind of happens when we get to the foundation stuff. But the hard part is that you do have different cultures, you do have different ways of learning, and we have to be able to touch on those. And so you can only get so far with the virtual stuff. You have to make contact with people. You have to try to find a way to make that connection. But also we have other people that are on our team that help with that as well. The global team. Actually, we have people in France and in Germany and Poland and China, and so we have those barriers that we can get through. As long as the team understands the objective, then we can massage that content to better fit the regions.
Right. And if it's scripted, you could get AI to do the translation for you.
Yeah, I'm definitely into AI. I dabble with that quite a bit, and it's interesting some of the things that are out there that can make your mouth even look like you're speaking another language, and it sounds like you coming out. So,
Yeah, well, that can get kind
um,
of scary. So
it
yeah,
can, but when we look at what is the future, and if we want to teach somebody that's fits our organization, it could even be a town hall meeting,
yeah,
where you're presenting once in your native language, and everybody can see your lips and the sound coming out translated like you're actually speaking it. I
yeah.
think it helps with our. I know it's kind of it bothers some people, but to me, one of the things I always say, and I used to say, I say this actually, you hear me say it, is that what's our best chance of success? What resources, how do we go about something? And if AI helps us with that best chance of success, I'm going to look into it and I'm going to try to learn
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I mean, it's much better than watching those old Godzilla movies, right?
Yeah.
With the lip syncing as they would try to do, so to
Yeah.
speak. And every tool can be used for with nefarious intent in mind. I
Sure.
mean, even a simple hammer can be, Maxwell's silver hammer, right? Uh, was used for nefarious purposes. So, I mean, there's a lot of good that can come from AI, but we just have to be cautious as it's being used. I don't think anybody in business is going to get in trouble using it. For what you're talking about, creating content to teach others in their native language. I mean, yeah, obviously that's there's no harm there, but that same approach can be used for something a little bit more sinister. We just got to guard ourselves, I think, against it as a
Yeah.
society.
Well,
So,
it's one of the things that we can't stop, right? It's
right,
gonna continue to advance, and like you said, somebody's going to find a way to use it in a bad way. But
yeah,
that's not my intent. My intent is I
yeah.
want to teach people and I want to make progress.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. And this is just another tool to be able to do it quicker and more thoroughly and easier. I'm with you 100% on that. So just got a couple of other questions here, and we'll wrap it up for today. First off, I really appreciate your coming on. I've really enjoyed the conversation. The first question I have is there any golden nugget that I haven't extracted out of you through this questioning in our conversation that you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I think something that I guess it was in the back of my mind that it never came out is I want you to think about this. Actually, I have it on a presentation and I'll just read it. So there's when we talk about employee engagement, we talk about leadership. Is that what are the impacts of having good leadership? And before I read the statistics, I'll tell you that a couple of years ago, I did an experiment, right? We went to, me and a colleague, we went to a department that was struggling with high turnover and training and all this. And the crew wasn't gelling together. There was 23 people in the department. And the engagement was where I felt we were lacking. So what we did, we didn't go in and do a Kaizen or anything like that. We said, we're just going to go in and do an engagement. I was familiar with the department. I knew none of the names, right? So I knew nobody on the team, and I introduced myself, and where they did a tier one meeting every day and it was like 30 seconds. It was like, oh my gosh, it's like, what can we do to improve this? So I introduced myself, said, we're going to have a meeting after every break. So now we're up to 4 meetings, and we're going to debrief how the last 2 hours go, that type of thing. And so we eventually got really good engagement throughout the week. We got really good engagement. We had a lot of fun. And by the end of the week, we registered their productivity had went up 28%. And just through engagement. Now, keep in mind, we had more meetings, we had more downtime, but yet our productivity went up 28%. And even after we left, their productivity stabilized around 25% improvement from prior to that engagement event, because we were showing people, how do you truly engage your workforce, and how do you truly engage them? And that's the thing that there's a lot of things that I can do. If you need productivity, I can go find you 30%, but I could probably find you 30% through increased engagement. And a lot of people, we sometimes gloss over that we need to show people how to engage. Employee engagement, it's not about, pizzas or parties or picnics. And sometimes we think that people are just going to inherently do better if we buy them stuff, but we need to be better at talking to them and connecting with them. But
Right.
the fact that it was last month, Charter Management Institute said that 82% of all bosses are accidental managers, meaning they've never had any formal training to become a leader. And so so how do we get them?
I absolutely agree with you
need.
on this. I can't tell you how many times I go into an organization and the person that is been moved up is moved up because there's a void above them. Not that they're prepared for it. And I can understand even if they're moved up and not prepared for it, but there's no plan in order to upskill them to meet the requirements of their new role. And worse, they almost never prepare the person that's going to fill their shoes. So now you have this stretching of inability across the stratification of the organization, and eventually the rubber band breaks. I agree.
Yep.
I would not argue with those numbers at all. I see it time and again that people are just promoted and not prepared, and there's no plan to prepare them.
You think, at that level, you think that how does that affect that person? But more importantly, as you get closer to the front line, they're in charge of more people. How does it affect the people? And when you have a frontline leader that's in charge of 40 people, find another manager somewhere within your organization that has 40 direct reports. You're probably going to have a hard time finding that.
Right.
And so that's right there where that weakest link could be. And that's where I think that we certainly need to do this at the management level. When we, like you said, stretch this rubber band, eventually something breaks. But we've got to be able to do better at getting our leaders what they need, because almost all of them are what they call accidental managers. They were just filling a void. Now go figure it out.
Right.
One other interesting statistic, so the 89% of employees say a good manager is more important than pay. And to go along with that, there's a bunch of other statistics showing that good leadership influences the turnover. And so, a lot of organizations, I hear it throughout different industries, how we've struggled with finding people to do work. Just hiring people, just filling those voids has been difficult. And one of the things that we can do, and it doesn't take a lot of energy, is to work with our frontline leaders and on up, right? And so that to me, it all kind of comes together. If we do a really good job of developing our leadership and getting them comfortable with engaging employees, continuous improvement becomes so much easier.
Yeah, I'm involved in a lot of workforce development. And what I'm always looking at is the employee life cycle, from the recruitment, or if it's internal, who internally are you recruiting? What's the onboarding process? What do they need to be successful? Understanding that they're not going to have everything they need to be successful when they take that job. But what is that upskilling and cross-skilling regimen look like? And who's filling the void that they're that is created as they move up the ladder? And then eventually, they get to a point where they're going to move up or over into a different part of the organization, or, maybe up the management curve. And there's so little time and energy given to building the assets that they have, that the companies have. They spend so much time recruiting, and everything is all beautiful and great, and you're going to love it here. But when they get in, they're in the sausage grinder, right? Mm-hmm. And the excellent companies, you see this in the military all the time. Those people know how to make sure that people have the skill sets necessary to succeed in whatever role it is that they're going to be assigned to before they take full control of that position. And I think that companies have to pay that much attention also. HR can't just be about compliance. You know what I mean? And making sure that the forms are filled out. HR really could be strategic in making sure that the career paths and the skill sets necessary are all planned for building that high performance organization.
Completely agree. Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. So I have one last curveball question I'm going to throw you here. You've been around for 34 years or 32 years at Donaldson, restaurant before that, auto parts before that. You've been around, you've obviously got global experience now. If you had one do-over, what would it be? Why would it be? And what would you do different?
Ooh, you didn't prepare me for that one. So I love the type of work that I do. I love finding opportunities and helping people find those opportunities, showing people, developing people. I think if I had a do-over, I would have found a way to get me to where I'm at sooner, at a much younger age. So my passion has always been problem solving. I often get called, hey, we got a big problem. What, can you come here? Can you take a look at it? Can you help us solve it? That's my zone. If there's a problem, that and leadership development are my two passions. I probably, I don't say it's not a regret that I have any regrets, the path that I've taken, because the School of Hard Knocks is a very good school, but I probably would have gotten my degree sooner. I probably would have chosen this path, the career trajectory that got me to this point sooner.
No, that's excellent. That's excellent. Sometimes you just don't know what path it is that you have your passion for until you find it. It's not really always planned, and finding it, that happens on its own time and time schedule, not on ours.
Yeah. I guess if I was to expand upon what I just said, I just briefly thought about it. I love solving problems. One of my idols is Dean Kamen. He's a professional inventor. I'd love to invent. But even, I love the fact that, like what you've done, was it for 25 years you've been, you've been doing this type of work, continuous improvement and development, transformation. And I think that would be very rewarding to take a path like that too.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, the part about problem solving is that you get to sit back and have a moment of saying, wow, that really came together. And by the way, the problem solving doesn't involve me. It's not up to me. Okay, it's up to everybody else that's on the problem solving team, right? I mean, your problems aren't solved by you. They're solved by you and an assortment of other characters and resources that all work together to help solve that problem. So I like getting a team. My favorite thing is getting a team to operate as a team. Just to, like, I don't know if you follow rugby at all, but I watched the South Africans. They won their World Cup, South African rugby team. They beat like 4 other teams by 1 point. You know what I mean? So this is not like a slaughter. This is not like, but man, they just worked so well together. And I go sailing. And one of my good friends is a bowman on South Africa's entry into the America's Cup. And I went on a training exercise with them around Cape Town Bay once. And I sail, but not at this level. And I felt so utterly useless. My mission was to stay out of the way. And everybody was just like, the captain wasn't blaring out, or barking out orders. Everybody knew what line to get on and when and what to do. And me, I was rail meat. That was it. Get one rail to the next. So that's what I like, is watching a team come together and problem solve.
Yeah, I've said before, people have talked with me about my career, and a lot of people have taken interest in me starting from where I started and to where I'm at.
That's cool.
And I tell them I've never done anything alone. I've watched people try to do things alone, and you don't get the buy-in. You get you get a lot more failures. And a team is where it's at. You should always work together with people on teams, even if you think that, it's something that it's small and meaningless. It may not be to somebody else. So
Right.
I always say that all of my successes that I've had have never been alone. I've never been alone.
Right. And the best part about doing it as a team is that you don't celebrate alone. There's nothing worse than celebrating alone. You celebrate with the team, and maybe you bring out the pizza, right?
Yep. So I may be one putting the credit card down for the pizza, but we're celebrating as a team.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Scott, I really appreciate you taking the time on a Saturday to speak with me today. It was a great conversation. I appreciate it a great deal.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy. I could talk for forever, right? But I really appreciate you inviting me. This has been a lot of fun.
Good. Well, I hope our paths cross in real life soon enough.
Yep. When you come to the States, or if I head your way, we'll have to maybe meet up in a pub somewhere.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Well, thanks a lot, Scott. You have a great rest of your day.
All right. You too. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to State of Readiness. You can discover more episodes and learn about the book written by Joseph Paris of the same title at www.state-of-readiness.com. You can learn more about Joseph Paris at www.josephparis.me/card.